Well, megachurch pastor Rick Warren finding himself under attack in the wake of the tragic death of his own son. 27-year-old Matthew Warren took his own life Friday evening after battling years of depression. In a written statement, Pastor Warren said of his son, quote, "In spite of America's best doctors, meds, counselors, and prayers for the healing, the torture of mental illness never subsided. Today, after a fun evening together with Kay and me, in a momentary wave of despair at his home, he took his life." And yet at this tragic time, the pastor has been scorned and attacked for his faith and his beliefs. I mean, the vitriol online that's being directed at Pastor Warren right now is nothing short of shocking. It's disgusting. And it's hard to understand. Joining me now to help is Tony Perkins. He's president of the Family Research Council and Fox News contributor Father Jonathan Morris. It's just, look, I'm not going to give a voice to the haters because, boy, oh boy, and I mean, these are people who are really in a dark place, taking shots at Pastor Warren, at his son, and to a large extent, it seems to focus on his religious beliefs around the topic of, among others, gay marriage. Pastor Warren doesn't believe in gay marriage, and yet those who do, not all of them, but some, seem to use this occasion, Father Morris, as an excuse to take a terrible shot at the family. Your thoughts on it?
That's right. I have seen a lot of that, Megan. I've also seen accusations at him that he's a hypocrite because he's preached that God has an answer to suffering, that God has a solution to a senseless life, and yet his own son died in this way. Those are ridiculous, nasty, tasteless, and very sad responses. Pastor Warren has been a great man for our country. He's offered a faith-filled, but also a rational and love-filled voice of moral reasoning. And I've seen that even the way he relates to someone like me who differs on some theological issues. He's been a friend to me. He wrote a foreword to my last book. He's invited me to his church, something that a lot of even evangelical pastors would not do, because you would say, oh, he's different than me. He has been a loving, rational, faith-filled voice, and he's going to be able to deal with this great suffering, perhaps the greatest suffering any person can endure, the death of a child.
Yeah. You know, Tony Perkins, I know, look, you go to the internet, if you want to find hate, and look up some anonymous postings on the internet. You know, it can happen on any given subject on any given day, but you think in this country maybe some things are still inviolate, you know, the birth of a baby, the loss of a child, and yet, again, I'm not going to get into the specifics, but I'll give you one example only. I'm sure they earned their suffering. Warren is a monster. Your thoughts on this?
Well, Megan, I was out actually camping with my family this weekend. I got an email from someone close to Rick Saturday morning telling me about it. And our family's been praying for them over the weekend. I can only begin to imagine, as a father of 5 children, really the pain and the suffering and the grieving. But you made a point. There was a time in this country when, as a country, even though we differed on ideologically, politically, we would take a break when someone suffered such a great tragedy. And you're right. What is being said about Pastor Warren, I don't agree with him on everything, probably a lot more than I disagree. And we've worked with him on a number of things like PEPFAR. You know, he did a lot of work in Africa where it came to AIDS, and he's been very out front. In fact, as a result of his work and his example, I began being involved in Honduras with an orphanage to AIDS children whose parents died from AIDS. He's done so much to reach out to mitigate the consequences, the things that have been associated with promiscuity. And yet, those very people have been the ones that have said some of the most hateful and vicious things about him. And I just think, you know, well, let's take a time out, and we're all a part of the human race.
Right.
And we ought to grieve for just a moment, if not longer, for a parent who's lost a child who was tormented through mental illness. I don't know all, I just know they've dealt with this for a number of years. It happens. Let's pray for Rick and Kay and that entire family and that congregation.
You know, Father Morris, there was an interesting op-ed in the Washington Times today, and it says in part, whether you believe that Rick Warren is an honest minister, a fallen minister, or a religious charlatan, it is a rejection of all that makes humanity beautiful, or the object of God's love, to take joy in the pain of the Warren family.
Well, that's so true. And let me say, even the suggestion that he's a charlatan or that he's a fake, it doesn't match up with the facts. First of all, this is a man who doesn't take any salary from his church, who has taken made a vow to take 90% of any earnings from his own books and to give them to his foundation for the poor. And so the effects of anonymous postings on the internet going after him, taking advantage of him in this weak time, is despicable. You know, there is a good solution, I think, given the fact that we're living in this world of new media, Megan, and that is we have an opportunity to put all of those negative comments into context by sharing our love for him, by sharing our love for Matthew, by sharing our love for all of the families out there who suffer the terrible, terrible suffering of mental illness. We can go on and make posts. We can go on and share our love for humanity and for the Warren family in particular in this moment. That's the good news of these tough times.
Tony, what do you make of it? Because obviously a lot of people think that Pastor Warren is on the wrong side of the gay marriage issue. You can relate to him in this way because, being on the wrong side, I'm not passing a judgment on that, but you also oppose gay marriage and have been the subject of attacks. And it seems like some, not all, but some of those who want tolerance and acceptance in their effort to get it are very willing to pass judgment, alienate, attack, and go about it in a way that may be undermining the very thing they seek.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, just to show a little bit of human compassion to a parent who has lost a child would go a long way in showing that they're, that they just want to be accepted and enjoy tolerance. I first heard Rick almost 25 years ago at the Southern Baptist Convention when he was an upstart pastor there, had started Saddleback. They were still meeting in schools. I've gotten to know him personally. He came to Louisiana, my home state, back when we had Katrina pulling pastors together. He's been a part of PEPFAR. We worked with him at the Family Research Council to push this through Congress to get funding to help AIDS. I mean, he's done everything I believe that a Christian leader could do to show both the truth and the love of Christ. And I think what he would say right now if he were responding is, you know what? I still love you, and there is hope and there's peace for you in Jesus. And I do hope at some point we can sit down and talk. I think that's what he would say. Yeah. But I know they're grieving, and I would just encourage folks to pray for them. Sometimes, Megan, even as a follower of Jesus Christ, there are some things we just cannot explain. And I think this is one of those cases.
Absolutely. And he makes a profound point about mental illness and the toll it can take on individuals in this country. Father Morris, Tony Perkins, thank you both so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Megan.
Well, coming up as we hear new anger over a foul-mouthed coach at Rutgers University, Dr. Keith Abloh joins us next on his